mental abuse.
Yeah.
You're teaching a child you're bad because of this. And that's just not the case. You're teaching young black children, well, you've been oppressed for so many years, we're going to give you a leg up. Not, let's teach you how to do this. So the adage of teach a man to fish versus just catch a fish for the person, right?
Yeah.
You catch that one fish, the person, they eat for a day. You teach them how to fish, you're eating for a lifetime. If you're not going to teach a child how to think critically, you're going to teach a child how to be entrepreneurial, you're not going to teach a child how to be a leader, that child will not grow to that. Right? In my life, I just my experience, other people's experience are different. In my experience, I have not put down my race on applications because I wanted them to see me for my skill set.
Yep.
I have my own business in part because I work hard. I've been a leader in multiple companies, Fortune 500 companies. I've been overseas. I've been across this entire country. I've got training that's taking place down in Texas that's still holding through today. I have drivers and supervisors and colleagues, former colleagues, still calling me up. Hey, I got some things running past you. All right, what do you got? I have no problem talking through an issue. But I do that, and I've done that because I didn't let my race dictate who I was. I let my skill set, my character, speak volumes of what I can do. And when people saw that, I was rewarded for that. Again, my experiences are different than anyone else's. But I teach my children the same thing. I don't care what someone calls you. The N-word, forget about it. It means absolutely nothing. Your mission and your goal in life is to be the best person that God wants you to be. If you keep that in mind, and you learn the foundational principles of how to think critically and move forward in our world, you will be successful as long as you get it one time. Right? So when you let the alarm clock go off, you kind of miss some things. But you get up early, you do your thing, you work hard, and you will be rewarded. That's why I teach my children. And I know all of you guys are taught the same thing as well. You work hard, and rewards will come. But you want to slack off and be lazy, and then say, well, you know what? I think I should get this stuff because I'm owed this. Well, no, you're not. Right? There are a lot of students like that. They don't want to do the work. Right? California just went through a system where, because children were out with COVID, the teachers were out with COVID, they changed our exam, the midterm exam, from a full exam. They said, well, if you don't do well, we won't hold it against you if your GPA gets affected. If you do well, we'll apply it. Okay, so if I have a GPA, just throwing a 3.0 GPA, and I don't feel like studying, I'm not going to study. If I know the test isn't going to count, what's my incentive? So it's not just about the test at that moment. So they'll tell you that. That's a life lesson. I'm going to sit back and let the boss change the rules for me because I don't want to work hard. So if we all stop working hard, the company will change for us. And what are we seeing with companies today? They are changing dramatically across the country. They're putting in these types of trainings for their own employees, right? They're saying, well, okay, so you need this much time off, that much time off. We can't find workers, so okay, we'll have this. I can tell you point blank, when I was coming up in the ranks, if I didn't show up for work because I needed a mental health day, I didn't have a job the next day.
Yeah.
It's just reality, right?
How does companies stay in business? How do you stay in business like this?
At some point, something has to break.
Because it's already hard to find people who are truly qualified.
Exactly. And not just qualified, but even want to work. It's very difficult when you have the qualifications and you're still getting something handed out to you on the side. And you say, okay, well, you got to work hard. Why? I'm working hard for it. They're going to give me X, Y, and Z, so why should I work hard for it? We're teaching our children the same exact thing, right? Like when you change those processes under the disguise of COVID, you're just teaching the kids that hard work doesn't mean anything anymore. And for those kids who did work hard, who have the 4.0, the 4.3, who get up every morning and they bust their butts every day to get that, what are you telling those kids? Right? Your hard work means nothing. Don't worry about that. We're going to give this kid over here. Hey, come on up. Yeah, you're going to take some of his. So you ask these kids in colleges, hey, when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, do you believe in that? Absolutely. We should have it. Yep, on board. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take your GPA, a 4. I'm going to give 2 points to this person over here with a 1. Wait. Hang on. You're going to do what? I'm going to diversify and make it equitable to include them in the college experience by taking all your hard work and giving it to this person here. wait a minute, that's not fair. Why is it not fair? I work hard for my stuff. Well, that business worked very hard to get where they are to supply jobs for people who are working there. Why then should we take money out of their pocket and give it to somebody else simply because that other person said they want it? And that's what we're teaching our children now.
For the GPA to go along with that, Caledonia just eliminated our valedictorian and salutatorian positions to where they are no longer rewarded, no longer are our top 10 GPAs rewarded. So there is no longer an incentive for kids to do well for their GPAs because so now
equitable for a few, not everybody.
And that's what they said. So they said that they took that process away because they found that kids were cheating the system. Okay. So if you have a child that found a way to take other courses to get their GPA higher, is that ingenuity? Is that critical thinking? Or is that your interpretation of cheating? Because if I had that kid, good job, buddy. Get that GPA up there, right? So why couldn't you teach other children? So if you want to change it, there's a loophole there, close the loophole. Don't destroy the whole system, close the loophole. You can't keep taking the incentives away from children who want to learn. And that's what this stuff does, right? When you're constantly talking about one race over the other, or this race is inferior because, or this race it needs to be lifted up because, that because is the pullback of the incentive to work hard. It simply is. So talking about that for myself at the school board when I spoke about it, that's where I was coming from. It was more of a place of passion for my own children, and not just my kids. Because my kids they're going to be out of school here in the next couple of years. My son has 1 more year left, my daughter will have 2 after that.
How did they see you?
So the parents in the meeting were all over it. They loved it. The school board not so much. So I've been searched by the Caledonia School Board. I'm not in social media for a reason. I do have LinkedIn for my professional purposes. So Caledonia School Board has looked myself up on my LinkedIn 5 different times.
Wow.
I've had parents come up to me and say, "Hey, I heard what you said. I completely disagree, but hey, you're allowed to say what you want to say." I've had people take pictures of my vehicle and license plates and so forth and so on. So there are people out there, and you know what? We're still in America. They can do whatever they want to do as long as they don't try to harm myself or my children. That's where I draw the line, right? So they can do what they want. For me, at the end of the day, I know who I belong to. I know where my faith is. So they can't harm me. So I'm going to stand up and speak out when something needs to be said. Right is right, wrong is wrong. My father was a 42-year military man, and he and I used to clash all the time because he's like, "Look, just follow the rules." I'm like, "Yeah. If I did the crime, I will do the time. Until then, I'm fighting." So I stood in front of the JAG officer, at the military bases. Oh yeah, a number of times because they said I was speeding or I did this. I'm like, "Nah, don't think I did." And here's my proof. So my father, though he's again very staunch, very strict, very regimented man. I love the man to death. I will walk through flaming walls of hell for that man. But he and I always clashed because he always said that I take things too far in my stand-up. And I said, "Dad, my children are doing the same thing I'm doing now by standing up for themselves." My daughter, in fact, to go along with my son, when he did his thing, he had a teacher that in my daughter's class was bullying my daughter, saying that my son needs to be kicked out of school for hate speech. And she stood up, and the teacher didn't know that my daughter could make, they look not alike. I'm like, no, not really, no. My daughter's got deep, deep blue eyes from her mother, and long curly hair. And she's got my wife's nose, but my lips. My son looks just like my wife. He has nothing in me. Got this, some of the curls. But
It's all good.
so in my daughter's class, she was bullied by one of the teachers saying that he should be kicked out. It was hate speech, and she stood up and said it wasn't hate speech. It was his opinion. Because he clearly wrote in there it was opinion. Yeah. And the teacher went after my daughter. And to my daughter's credit, she stood her ground and said, "No, you're wrong. This is an opinion piece. And he does not hate white people. He doesn't hate black people. It's impossible." And he said, "How do you know?" I said, "He is racist." She says, "No, his mother's white and his father's black. So he's not racist." "You're wrong. You just sit down." She says, "Well, I'm right. and that violated the school's bullying policy.
Absolutely.
Right? And not just that, but that's an adult. Yeah, that's an adult going after a child.
And not to mention that what he's teaching others. I mean, look at the example he's setting.
Exactly. So the school was almost, what do you think, a split, almost 50-50 for him and some against him. He had, I think the state troopers wrote him a letter and said, hey, we're on your side 100%. So you need anything, let us know. I mean, it was a really great experience for him as an individual because of what he did. He stood his ground. My daughter stood right next to him, shoulder to shoulder. In the house, you never know their brother and sister. Non-stop. But you stepped outside the house and he got attacked and she's like, oh no, not today. Not today. So I was very, very proud of them both. But that's what you have in these schools. If you think differently than society says you should think, DEI comes into play. CRT comes into play. The teachers will stand up for that injustice versus real injustice. They went after a child and wanted to expel him for an opinion piece that his teacher assigned them to write. He went like all in. I wish I had the paper to read to you guys, but he went 100% in. We're to the point where my wife and I had people calling us from other states. Hey, I'm so sorry. What's going on? Is your son okay? I'm like, what are you talking about? And we started digging into it and realizing what happened, what he was saying. He spoke out against homosexuality. He spoke out against this nonsense and injustice. He spoke out against people bashing on police officers. He spoke out against transsexual. He spoke out against smoking and vaping. He went all in because he knows what his faith is. He spoke out against it and stood strong against it, and they vilified him for it.
What was the actual assignment?
The assignment was a poem. Who was the poet? Who was the poem?
I forget who the poet was, but our assignment was to write your opinion about your generation because we were reading a poem about.
Was it This Generation? Is that what it was called?
I forget what the poem was called. It was last year, early at the beginning of the year.
So it was a poem about the generation, and the writer wrote both a pro and con on the generation. So the teacher asked the students to write a piece in that same context. The problem was the teacher put where they had to post assignments on a Google page. So any kid could pull it up that had access online. So in my personal opinion, I believe the teacher was looking for reaction. Because there had to be some knowledge as an adult that some kid was going to write something that everyone was going to dislike. It just happened to be my son. So, I still
Good for you.
very proud of him, but it was
Good for you.
we got the call and I'm at work and like, I need to leave now. My son's going to jail. I don't know what's going on. That's all something's going on. They got other schools, they got petition, get out, expel. Well, what is going on? When I found out what happened, I had made him read it off to me and I said, well, what was the pro for? And he read the pro. Well, you put them together, it made perfect sense. I read the assignment. But the person who posted it online and sent it out to all the masses just put the negative piece out there. Right? So that's what it is. But
And that's what they're doing with everything.
Yeah.
So it's the same.
Is this John?
Sean.
Sean, you got good parents, I can tell, and a great upbringing. Your friends and your peers, how are they handling this? Do they know what's going on? Do you talk to them about, do they talk about SEL or any of the stuff that's going on in the school?
Sometimes it's kids just try to ignore it. What I've noticed in our school is that we just try to ignore it and have fun. Sometimes we'll even make fun of the teachers for having poor, I guess, teaching skills, you could say. But for me, it's harder to actually see this stuff because I'm in more AP classes for my core classes. So they are very to the book and very regimented and are already given pre-made assignments and pre-made courses that they have to teach to us because it's an AP class and they're college classes, so they can't actually make their own. But I've had teachers, especially in my government class, who complain about the course not being able to change it themselves for what I'm guessing to be these different types of programs that are being taught to teachers to teach us.
So again, CRT is now DEI. SEL is designed to get kids used to the idea that there are differences and they should accept it outside of what they're being taught in the home. That's the reality where it's at. Yeah. Yes.
I have 100 questions.
Sure. Go for it.
I'm
No, you're up. Welcome. Fire away.
You're embroiled in this. You know, you have knowledge. You can explain this. It's really nice. You said a couple of things that I got to go back on. struck me as what's important about this. You bring Marxism into this.
You can. The difficulty with doing that is not a lot of people know about it.
I
Right? So
understand that.
that's a difficult portion. When you start talking about Marxism, people shut down because they don't understand it. They don't know what it's about unless you're fully educated in that process. And we have some people in our own group that are very, very well versed in it. I'm not as versed as they are. I can sit and listen to it all day long. I can absorb it. I love it. I love hearing about it, so I can I educate myself, so I can then teach others. But when you're talking to the average person, they have no idea what they're talking about. And as soon as you start saying it, the unfortunate part is you're seen as a nut job.
Yeah,
Right?
I
You're
understand.
that person. So people close down and they don't want to hear it. And it's even now with CRT. If I step up now at our school board and say CRT, oh, here we go again, this guy against CRT, right? Nobody wants to hear it. That's the reason why they're changing to DEI. That way it puts you in a corner of saying, well, you don't want diversity. That's not true. You don't want equity. That's not true. You want inclusion. That's not true. I want those things in the proper context and where they belong, not where you're trying to place it. And not at the age you're trying to place it either.
But it also allows them to deny that they're teaching CRT.
Absolutely.
Or still states.
Absolutely.
So-
Kelly did the same thing too.
So just follow up, why do you think it's being integrated in the school system? That's where the Marxism comes in. To me, if somebody asks me, if I can explain
It's a,
something
so
to them.
it's a system of control.
Okay.
It's a level of control, right? You can, if you simply look at what's happening with our own government when they're saying there was a, and I don't sound like a conspiracy theorist here, so I don't feel I have proof. There was something that came out a while back by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, my favorite. She made a statement that someday they want to get to the point where if you own property that's not your primary, you are not going to be allowed to rent. You have no right to rent that to somebody else. You should just give it away.
It's not a conspiracy. She did say that.
So I believe that a lot of this teaching, a lot of this training is designed because they know they're not going to get us, right? We're going to be the rebellion. We're going to be the ones who stand up every day and say, not on my watch, not today. At some point, we're not going to be here. But if they can get the younglings, the ones who are coming up and say, oh, mommy and daddy are wrong. And they've said that. Don't tell mom and dad I'm teaching you this because it's so hard to get you to get, you might not get an A because you won't listen to me. So don't tell your mom and dad I'm teaching you this. Because I've had students say that, right? I've had other parents in our group say their kid came home and said, hey, I wasn't supposed to tell you this, but I don't think it's right. Here's what they told me. So they're telling our children not to come home and talk to us about what they're being taught because it's so difficult to unteach what the parents are teaching wrong. That's just not the case. If the children are being taught correctly, we wouldn't be saying anything differently. That's what it is. So if you look at the communist countries, how is their government formed? What do their people do? Their people were placed in communes, right? So if you make this much, you live here. Here's your food ticket, here's this, here's that. I believe it's a system of control they're trying to place in our children, and they can't get the ones who are already established, who know what true freedom really is. So if they get the ones who are young enough to be impressionable by these crazy teachings, at some point they take over. And they're already indoctrinated into this nonsense. And the group of us who are ready to fight back will be too small to really fight back at that point. I believe that's what it really is about.
So are you still running for school board?
I am. So
He'll take donations.
so I have my election number. I'm waiting for some other paper I'm still waiting for the state to give me. I believe they're dragging some of their feet on this stuff because they know who I am. That's just my personal opinion. I have no proof of that, but it's been two other people I know who are also running. They have their stuff within 24 hours. Wow. It's for me, it's racist. You're holding me down! Where's my equity? I'm not being included! So yes, I am running for school board. So people ask me, why am I running for school board when my kids are going to be out of the school system pretty quick? I do this because I believe God wants me to do this. I do it because I was always taught to do the right thing, right? right? Stand up when you have to stand up, despite what my dad says. He does. and he, again, I want to tip my hat to him, Phil. He is one of the individuals who, he gives money to anyone on the street that asks. He's like, angels will walk among us, so I'm not sure if I'm not getting to heaven and say, here you go, here you go. He's that guy. He's just one of those guys who he'll tell me, hey, you gotta be careful, but he's always been the one to stand up in the face of danger and say, out of my watch, right? So I learned that from him, that when something is wrong, you stand up and say the right thing. And a lot of people don't want to hear it, and a lot of people get offended by it. But at the end of the day, I'm not doing it to offend someone, I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Doing it for the kids.
And I'm doing it for the children. My kids are going to be out, but there's kids coming behind them who are going to be subject to this nonsense. And there's no one on our board
Who's gonna speak up?
who has stood up. So there are people on the board who don't believe in what's being taught. There are people on the board who believe the same way I believe, but they've yet to stand up and say, stop, wait a minute, this isn't right. They voted with everything that's come down the pipe. And what I've heard is that, well, we decided that in the beginning to create an air of unison. Okay, I am never going to be a yes man. I'm always going to do and say what's right. Now, if what I agree with doesn't really agree with everyone else, I guarantee I'm going to give an explanation as this is why I voted this way. You may not like it, but I believe this is the course that the school should be on.
That's how Congress is run too.
It doesn't make any
Parallels
sense.
exactly what's going on.
Exactly, and it doesn't make any sense. We need leaders to stand up and say, stop. I don't believe this is the right direction we're going in. Why are we doing this? If one of our school board members had done that, and I saw it, I might not run. But when you stand up there and you're telling them the story of what's happening to your children, and you have one person in a mask who's just doing this, another person is looking up at the sky, another person
Yeah,
is looking at their watch.
it's easier to look away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
say
won't
this is
listen
not
to you
happening.
because they
Right,
believe
right.
they're superior to you.
Yeah.
Even though you voted them into their positions and you can vote them out, they sit up there pompous as if they don't have to answer to you, and that's just not the
This board at
case.
this meeting.
I saw it in the
They
news.
just sat there and.
I saw it.
While they were reading this most pornographic stuff. They
Yeah.
just sat there.
And they didn't care.
Yeah, it's like, how can you not care?
Yeah. It really, it is, isn't it?
So when you get on the school board, because I'm optimistic.
We're all gonna support it.
Right, I wish I could vote in that district, but what will it take to unravel? I mean, this stuff is, it's deep rooted.
It's a lot deeper and it goes a lot higher than what my pay grade would be at that point, right?
Yeah.
So the only thing I can do when I get on the board is speak out against it and push back and push back and push back.
Or on my side.
It's going, that's,
Right.
ultimately,
Run for super.
that's what it's gonna take. I
Yeah.
mean, well, school board
Well, but
seat
again,
first,
that
so-
comes, to
steps.
answer,
So, I mean,
to
it's-
answer her question, it starts, like you said, much higher than the top of the school board, leaderboard. It starts with whoever's in the White House, but then it also filters down to our governors. So we need to make sure that we get a governor in place that is totally against this, because they're not gonna take the federal dollars, and they're gonna push back on all this and eliminate it if we get the
We're
right one.
working on that, but right now we got so many people that are running for governor that it's gonna have to be somehow tiered down because
It will.
otherwise we're gonna have.
It's gonna happen because
In a-
they have to get to
Yeah,
2,000
in a short period of
signatures.
So
time,
the
there's gonna
question
be
you have
about
to
6
ask
of them
yourself
that
at
are
that point then
eliminated.
with the governor, and kind of a little off topic, but why is Michigan not independent in terms of finance, right? Michigan has some of the hardest workers. I grew up in New Jersey, South Jersey at that, close to Philadelphia. And I moved and lived all over the U.S. Coming to Michigan, I went to Texas, worked there, came back. Right? So Michigan has some of the hardest workers and the most ethical people I've ever worked with. And when I look at that and look at what the big three have done, not big two really, and I think of all of the resources that we have here, the question that comes to mind is, why are we not attracting more businesses to Michigan? So we don't have to take federal dollars. Why can't we be a tax-free state? Right?
Amen.
We have a lot of I shouldn't say, you bring big business back into Michigan, you can go tax-free state, right? Or you can go flat tax state. But you don't have a leader in there right now, whether Republican or Democrat or independent, that is going to stand up and say, this is what we need to do. I think, to your point, until you get a leader like that in office, because you said there's a lot of people running, And I haven't heard from anyone on there the things that we should be hearing from, we're gonna fight against CRT.
I can help you with that.
Yeah, we can both help you with
Yeah.
that.
So why are we not, what are you gonna do about CRT? What are you gonna do about SEL? What are you gonna do about our education system? How are we not gonna take federal dollars to come to our schools, right? That is what should be asked from our potential governor.
She wants it, but she's in trouble.
I gotta take off.
Oh,
Thank you, Ian. Thank you,
Yep,
Ian.
yep.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome, you're welcome.
We're all behind you guys, your family, and we appreciate the support from here.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah.
So we need strong leaders, that's all it is. You know, again, I train my kids to stand up and say what's right. My daughter has done some amazing things with her own little friends, and, you know, since someone broke up this person, that person broke up, and I hate them. She's like, wait a minute, you're both wrong. Here's what you did wrong, here's what you did wrong, and I'm gonna say that one, and that's who she is. So, I just say to my kids only that we need to train leaders and critical thinkers in the US to get us where we need to be.
Amen.
They're all being trained by the-
Yes. Yes, sir.
So, one of the things that's critical to SEL and the diversity and equity is the reducing of the history. Our kids aren't grounded in history. And so, this has been a very elaborate plan, and that's what we feel we're fighting against. But you use the rules that you have to break through. For example, you put a superintendent that wants 2 years of American history. If we can teach our kids history, real history, they're not going to be polluted by, and that becomes the conspiracy is the equity and inclusion. See what I'm saying? But that's why history is being wiped out, so that they can redefine history. They haven't taken that away, so we might be able to defund programs, we might not, but if we can go some of the basic systems that are in place,
And the
then we
textbooks-
can win.